Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going back to a simpler time, a time when Call of Duty was peaking, a time when the series was still relatively fresh and new, and a time when the game's developers would sneak a ton of Easter eggs into the multiplayer maps themselves. A lot has been made recently about Activision's decision to remaster the Modern Warfare 2 campaign, but not release the multiplayer, which of course prompted fans to take matters into their own hands and remaster the entire multiplayer themselves, and everyone's talking about this game. People have a new interest, a revitalized interest in Modern Warfare 2, so I thought today it would be a lot of fun to take a look at a ton of hidden Easter eggs and references in the Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer itself that you may or may not know about. Now, of course, there are tons of these hidden details all throughout the Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer, so it would be near impossible to show each individual one, but these ones I've chose for this video are going to be some of my favorites because they go really deep and have a lot of story behind them. And of course, I threw in a couple of ones that are a bit more simple and just interesting to look at, but yeah, a lot of these have a lot of story behind them. I'm going to be going over all of that here in this video, so if you enjoy this kind of video, remember to leave it a like, and without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump right into the first hidden detail, which is going to be the newspaper stands. Throughout a ton of the maps here in the Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer, we can find these newspaper stands, and they reference the paper as the Infinity Ward Times, with the headline being Call of Duty 2. Now, if we look really closely on this newspaper, we can see an image of the nuclear blast that killed Jackson in Call of Duty 4, and fun fact, a lot of these newspapers can actually be found on the map Invasion. Invasion, for those who don't know, was originally going to be added to Call of Duty 4 in the Variety map pack alongside Favela, but both of those maps were scrapped and then later repurposed as launch day maps for Modern Warfare 2, and it's interesting to see how this map, which was going to be in Call of Duty 4, has a reference to Call of Duty 4 on it, though most people don't know about it because who takes the time to actually look at the newspapers when they're running around and playing the multiplayer. It's neat how all this stuff just sort of works together, and speaking of working together, let's move over to the map Skid Row. Here are going to be two of my favorite hidden details in the game. If we look at the game's sports store in spectator mode above the big sale sign, we will see the Major League Gaming logo. Now obviously the MLG text is not there, likely for copyright reasons, but it's cool to see that the art designers are adding a nod to one of the websites that was pivotal in Call of Duty growing as much as it did back in the early days of the franchise. Now another hidden detail is one that some of you may know about, but perhaps not all of you. If we go in spectator mode and outside of the map, hidden on this building, we see the name Alexander Roycewitz 2009. Now, for those who don't know, Alexander was a map designer for Infinity Ward, and he would often add his carpenter's mark to the maps that he created, often hiding it outside the map or in some place where typically the players can't find it. He would put his name along with the year that the map was finished, and he started doing this back in Call of Duty 4 with maps like Overgrown and Ambush, and he continued doing this in Modern Warfare 2 with maps like Skid Row, Quarry, Afghan, and of course High Rise. Now speaking of High Rise, the location where you can find his carpenter's mark is on top of one of the roofs, and that transitions somewhat nicely into the Teddy Bear Sniper Perch location, which some of you may or may not know about. Of course, if you played a lot of Modern Warfare 2 back in the day, then this spot is nothing new to you whatsoever, but keep in mind, Modern Warfare 2 is 11 years old at this point. There are lots of newer fans to the franchise who didn't play back in the day, and maybe now they're going back to Modern Warfare 2, or they're hearing about Modern Warfare 2 Multiplayer Remastered, and they're wondering what the game is going to be like. So for those guys, I wanted to show you that it was actually intended for you to be able to get on top of this roof. It takes a lot of climbing and a lot of running, and it's very dangerous to actually get up there, but if you can make it all the way to the top of the roof, you're going to find a ton of teddy bears, which of course are a staple Easter egg throughout all of the Infinity Ward games. And even though this isn't the greatest place in the world to be, because typically you're going to die on your way up here, it's still cool that they intended for you to get on top of this roof, and it's really cool to look back at old school map design, because old school Call of Duty maps had a lot of these secret spots and hard to get spots like this, and hopefully Call of Duty in the future goes back to fun map design like this. But moving along here, let's go ahead and check out the frozen map of Derail, because some fun references can be found here that maybe you guys never picked up on. If we take a closer look at a number of these boxcars that can be found on the map, you're going to see the text IW 2002, which is obviously referencing Infinity Ward Ward, and 2002 is the year that the studio was founded. And if you think about it, it's pretty neat that they decided to put this on boxcars, right? Because when they founded the studio back in 2002, they immediately began work on the first ever Call of Duty game, which would be released next year. Now, if you guys don't know this, a term that is often used in the gaming industry is shipped, right? When they work on a game and the game actually gets released, they often say that they helped ship the game. And here we are with the initials of the studio and the year it was founded on a train's boxcar that is used for shipping cargo. It's a very subtle but awesome reference in my opinion, and the other detail that I want to show you on this map before we move on is of course going to be the LEET train on the far end of the map. The references to 1337 are pretty obvious, and if you don't know what LEET means, then I assume you're pretty new around here or new to the internet in general, though it is worth mentioning that LEET speak isn't really popular anymore, but back in the day, back when Modern Warfare 2 was at its peak, it was definitely pretty popular, and it's kind of cool that they decided to make this train number 1337. Next up, we have some Easter eggs that go super deep and have a ton of story to them, and they can be found on the multiplayer map estate. If you look around inside the cabin, you're going to find a ton of framed movie posters. The resolution is pretty low given the age of the game, but at the bottom of each of these posters you can see Activision Pictures and Infinity Ward Entertainment being referenced like their movie companies, and funnily enough, you're also going to see a Vince Zampella and Jason West production. Now for those who don't know, Vince Zampella and Jason West were the founding members of Infinity Ward back in the day, though sadly enough it was during Modern Warfare 2 that they would both leave the studio. This made headline news back in the day. There was this big legal battle between Infinity Ward and Activision, and so when Vince and Jason left the studio, a lot of the original Infinity Ward team left as well, right during the Modern Warfare 2 life cycle, which was horrible, because if you played Modern Warfare 2 during its life cycle, you know that game was buggy. There were so many glitches, so many problems, and those problems were never really addressed because most of the studio was gone. They all just got up and left, and they went on to form Respawn Entertainment, which of course is the studio responsible for games like the Titanfall franchise and of course Apex Legends. It's neat to see the names of Vince Zampella and Jason West in game here. You would think that out of spite, Activision would have the new Infinity Ward team go in and change the names, but they're still around and they can be seen on all of these movie posters. Another fun fact about these posters is almost all of them are inside jokes from the developers themselves, with my personal favorite being Magnet Head. The poster reads, "Never tell him the odds. Brad Allen is Magnet Head." The best part about this poster is the face that we see is actually the face of Brad Allen. He was an artist at Infinity Ward from the day that the studio was founded up until 2010, when he left with Vince Zampella, Jason West, and a bunch of the other devs to go form Respawn Entertainment. Brad Allen is still actually at Respawn Entertainment. He's currently doing art for Apex Legends. His work can be found on ArtStation, of course, and funnily enough, his name on ArtStation is Magnet Head, like the poster that we see in Modern Warfare 2, which was designed in 2009. Now, speaking of designing things, by the way, Brad Allen is also the guy who designed the original Infinity Ward logo, which is still being used today. It's kind of crazy how much backstory there can be to something as simple as a poster in the basement of one of the Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer maps, right? I feel like most people never even noticed these posters while they were playing on the state, or if they did, they probably didn't think much of it. They probably assumed it was just a silly poster with made-up names and references, but it turns out that with a little research, you can see that there are tons of hidden Easter eggs and details like this around most of the old school Call of Duty multiplayer maps. Very rarely is something not a reference to something else. There was a lot of detail when it came to literally everything in a lot of these old school COD titles. Now, speaking of posters, there are some small ones that can be found on the map Underpass, which advertise the Infinity Ward Rockfest starring Griggs. Now, Call of Duty 4 fans will obviously remember that Griggs was one of the characters from that game, but did you know that Griggs himself was actually modeled after and voiced by Mark Grigsby, who was the lead animator at Infinity Ward at the time? He, like a lot of people, left the studio in 2010 to form Respawn Entertainment, but last year he left Respawn to rejoin Infinity Ward and help out with Modern Warfare 2019. Now, going back to the poster here, it's awesome that they reference the Infinity Ward Rockfest because Mark Grigsby is actually pretty good at making music. It's one of his passions, and he also was the guy who wrote and performed the ending credit song for Call of Duty 4, and now we see a poster referencing his music on the map Underpass. I think that's really interesting, and since he performed the ending credit song for Call of Duty 4, before, I figure on that note I should wrap up this video. There are a lot more hidden references and Easter eggs in the Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer, so much so that I could do another video like this if you guys would like it, or perhaps I could dive deep into some of the other older Call of Duty titles like Black Ops 2, Modern Warfare 3, Call of Duty 4, World at War, and of course so on. If you enjoy this kind of content, let me know down in the comments. This was a lot of fun to put together, and I would love to do more of these in the future, because there's a lot more than what meets the eye when it comes to a lot of these old school Call of Duty multiplayer maps, and hopefully in today's video you guys learned a few new things about a super old game, and until the next one, I hope you guys all enjoyed. If you did, consider leaving the video a like, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.